Can you say again, please?
2 years ago, I pleaded with God to give me his heart. Since then, my husband and I have experienced a series of heartbreaks. Today, I had a CT scan performed at Hopkins because of a suspicious nodule on a chest x-ray. My breathing has worsened considerably. I am still suffering with presumptive MS of over 30 years. Why has our suffering escalated and in a state of perpetuity since praying this prayer?
My experience has been more in the medical field and the sciences, and as a student of medicine, one of the things that absolutely blew my mind, one of the things that we took for granted quite regularly, was just how finely hinged life is on the precipice of death. It's just, we so take it for granted that we wake up every morning. What say do we have in waking up in the morning? We go to sleep and we wake up and it happens regularly, and so we take it for granted. But there's nothing we do to make that happen cognizantly. And we think about momentarily the malady that you mentioned, that you have, the multiple sclerosis. We just act. So immediately we act. We see things, we can point to it, and it's so natural to us. We don't even think about what's happening here, that your brain and your nerves function as electrical systems, and you have capacitors that allow a signal to go from your brain to your finger and for your muscles to work at the very fast rate at which they do. And those capacitors, if they stop working, these myelin sheaths, you get multiple sclerosis. Just one small part, a very complex system, can cause such devastating effects. And as painful as it is, I think one thing that you have probably learned is just how beautiful it is and how much people take it for granted when this amazingly complex system works the way it ought to. Something we take for granted every single day. And I know when I pray, early on when I began to pray as a Christian, you know, I was a Muslim formerly, and part of my prayer was the 5 daily prayers. It was very scripted. Everything was scripted. The only thing I got to choose in my 5 daily prayers was which portion of the Quran to recite. So when I began to learn how to pray as a Christian, these improvisational prayers, I said, what am I supposed to pray? And I'd look at my hands as I'm praying. I'm saying, I got 10 things to pray about right here. Unlike many of the rest of us will ever be able to learn it. But the other thing that I learned in the process of transitioning from Islam to Christianity, the other thing that I learned was that God, according to Islam, we don't learn this. God did not stand apart from your suffering. He didn't watch you suffer and say, I want to see what she ultimately does. I want to see what way she finds for herself. God takes a look at our suffering and says, I cannot remain aloof from that suffering. I will enter into it. You know, Jesus could have come as a prince in a human sense. He could have come with power. He could have come at any time in human history. He chose to come at a very specific time when people had invented how to execute people the most painful way ever devised. The most humiliating way ever devised. God said, that type of suffering, which goes beyond all other suffering, that's what I will choose to take on for myself. He entered into it. And why did he do that? Out of love for you. He didn't watch you suffer and stand aloof. He took that suffering upon himself so that he could show us what true love was all about. He didn't watch you suffer and stand aloof. He took that suffering upon himself so that he could show us what true love was all about.
In other words, the Muslim can't lose. It's only a win-win situation for the believer. So much so as something that everybody gets sad about. You know, when people get sick, you become very sad for them. And it's a very difficult thing for families to cope with and things like that. But from an iman point of view, from a faith point of view, when the messenger is brought, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, someone who's sick, what does he say to them? La ba's. The first things he says, la ba's, no problem. That's the first thing he tells them. It's a strange thing to say to someone who's sick. He says, La ba's. Then he says, tahur insha'Allah. It is a purifier by Allah's will. In other words, the longer you are sick, all of your previous sins are being paid for. And when you end up in front of Allah on Judgment Day, and you, instead of complaining, Ya Allah, why did you keep me sick for so long? I had diabetes, I had cancer, I had really bad allergies, this and that. On the Day of Judgment, you will thank Allah for that sickness. Because each second of that sickness was getting rid from you these sins. And you come before Allah purified, subhanAllah. So the person is going through affliction in this world, but even this is not sadness for them. Allah Azza wa Jalla even makes that a place of joy. You know, this is the power of this deen.
When Allah has tested you, when you are patient, the reward of that sabr is so great that there is no ways I can describe it to you. Allah says, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah recompenses the one who engages in patience and sabr in a way that is unlimited. Unlimited. It is reported that when a person is sick and ill, and they are patient about it, and they continue, and if they die in that condition, or when a person who was sick happens to die on the Day of Qiyamah, when they see the reward that they accumulated solely by sitting and being patient, they will say, why didn't you keep us sick all our lives? We could have accumulated much more. So don't lose hope when you have a slight sickness here or there, terminal or not. We ask Allah to grant shifa to all those who are sick. Yes, it is an act of worship to go and seek cure. But at the same time, it is also an act of worship whilst the cure is being sought, that we bear patience.